All right, here we go. Hello. Welcome everyone to the Reyes Reflection Podcast. I'm your host, Nathanael Reyes. Now, some of you may know the synopsis of the podcast. It's me bringing on guests from all walks of life and them sharing their stories and experiences. So with that in mind, I was super excited when this next guest agreed to come on. She is kind, upbeat, passionate, but most of all, she has one of the toughest jobs. She's a public school teacher for a challenging inner city school district. Please welcome the wonderful and talented Lindsey St. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much, Nathaniel. Wow, that was a great intro. I don't know how to follow up with that. Oh my gosh, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm really glad to be here.
So how are you today?
I'm all right. Yesterday was a snow day, so that was kind of like a blessing in disguise. We learned when the snow days went away during COVID that you actually you really can't work and have a snow day, because we spent a lot of time shoveling out and scraping all the ice off yesterday, but it was pretty good. It was pretty good. I'm gearing up, ready for another week of school starting Monday. So Sunday's always a work day for me. So it was good. It was good to have an extra day.
Well, on that
So I'm
note,
all right.
I appreciate you coming on and thanking you for agreeing to record on a Saturday. I know that that's a sacred day for teachers.
Absolutely. I know. It's really yeah, Saturdays, I love that. Saturdays are really sacred, but I'm so happy. I'm super thrilled. I know we've had a conversation in the past, and like you mentioned in the past, just the gift of gab. I think we agreed the last time we chatted, we were like, oh yeah, we'll touch base like 10, 15, maybe 30 minutes tops. And it was like an hour later. It's just always good to speak with a person who's really, really interested in things that we do.
Yeah,
I'm really glad.
for
Yeah.
sure. It's funny. I was actually going to share that. So the background story of how I met you
Yep.
was during the pandemic. You volunteered to help me work on a project. And yeah, it really was only supposed to be 15 to 20
Yeah.
minutes.
It was like a
And
couple interview questions.
yeah, right. And
Yeah.
we ended up talking for well over an hour, right?
Was it over? It was a long time. It was a long time. And
Yeah.
I remember we both, like, there were a couple different moments where you're like, oh no, I don't want to use your time. And then we like kept talking.
Yep.
I was like, oh, I want to respect your time. But it just kept going. Yeah. It was a really great conversation. It
Absolutely.
was. Yeah.
So fast forward to the present, when
Yep.
this opportunity presented itself for me of
Mhm.
hosting a podcast, I knew I needed to have you on. Like I was like, I need to get her
Yeah.
on. So let's start with this. So obviously, we stated you're a public school teacher.
Yep.
When and why did you decide to do that career?
Mm, that's a great question. It's interesting because I'm actually what a lot of us we like, we're the career changers, and so those are the people who come into public education or education in general after pursuing a different career. And so to really talk about how I got into education, I think I kind of have to go back several years. I am not from a family of educators, which is unique, I think. A lot of times when you have educators, it's because they have these values instilled in them, a lot of times from people in their family who were also in education. And for me, that wasn't really the case. I come from a military family. My dad was in the Navy, and then he did engineering and project management. My mom was a stay-at-home mom for the first part of my life, and then she actually transitioned into being a paraprofessional. So she did work in a public school. And I think that between seeing her and the commitment and the love she put in toward her job, and seeing her come home and just really pouring her heart into the projects that she'd do with the kids. And she worked one-on-one with a lot of students, and just getting to know them so well, combined with my dad's military background, where it's like, okay, big project management kind of stuff, really, really valued a strong work ethic, still does to this day. I think all of that kind of put me on a path toward loving just education in general. I was a really hard worker in school. My parents always told me school was my job. And I also did a lot of extracurriculars on the side. Through my extracurriculars, I fell into theater and performing arts. I was the perfectionist child who didn't want to speak up in class. But through theater, I kind of fell in love with being on stage and telling stories. And I got to work with a lot of people. I got to be in leadership roles. And I stepped sideways into children's theater through people I met in that experience. So I actually began directing, choreographing, and kind of working in children's theater and children's theater camps when I was in high school. And I always did that on the side. So I went through college, declared biology as my major in undergrad, quickly realized being in the lab wasn't for me. But even during the summers and on vacations, and even when I changed careers, ended up becoming a healthcare management major. So that was my bachelor's, was healthcare management. I would do my healthcare management classes, and then I would go volunteer in the kindergarten class at the school down the street. Or I would do healthcare management, and then after classes, I'd go teach children's theater. And so I don't know why it took me so long to figure out, wow, this is my calling. This is what I'm passionate about. And then after 4 years of working in Mass General, Boston Children's, Harvard Medical School, with a phenomenal program called the Program in Global Surgery and Social Change. I think it's Program for Global Surgery and Social Change. They were awesome, but I got to see these people doing the thing that they love the most every single day. And it really is because I work with such awesome people in healthcare that I felt, okay, I can shift in. So I completed a master's through Leslie in 1 year. Wow.
Yeah, that's impressive.
It was like a residential program. Yeah, it was intense. And then I've been working in Lowell this is my 4th year. So Lowell Public Schools. And it's been awesome. But it's been a long road.
Yeah. I mean, that's a journey for sure.
It's a journey. It's a real journey. I know it's very unique, I think, for education to come from the science, the management, the healthcare. But I think, especially now during the pandemic, we're seeing a lot of similarities between healthcare and education.
Yep.
How they correlate. It's crazy. I mean, and most of it's like, it's just, that's the essential workers. You need healthcare, you need education. And both of those systems are very messy.
Yep.
Both of them can improve. There's lots of room for improvement. They're both subject to public policy, lots of public opinion. And I think that kind of what was appealing to me in both of those fields. It's interesting. Interesting.
Did you move a lot? You said your dad was in the military. So did you move a lot?
Yeah. Not a ton. He retired when I was 9. So he got so this is broadcasting my age to the world. But he retired when I was 9. He got out in 2000. So right before 9/11.
Wow.
And yeah, talk about timing, right?
Yeah.
So he was, when we were in a military family, it was like a different era. He was like in the military during, Desert Storm and all of that in the 90s. And so we did move. We lived in Rhode Island twice, and then Florida. And then I relocated. We went to New Hampshire, and we've been there since 2000. So that's kind of home for me. But I loved the military. It was so fun. It's just a lot of community in the military, no matter where you go.
So you go from muggy summers to brisk, cold, snowy winter. Yep.
We have the conversation on the daily, like literally this morning, we're sitting there having coffee, looking out at this ice that's coating everything. The sun's shining, it's beautiful. I was like, what if we lived somewhere where it was sunny all the time? And my fiance he's like, yeah, he's like, I'm coming around to the idea. Or like every time I'm shoveling anything, I'm like, 2-car garage. That's my requirement. 2-car garage.
Yep.
I can't handle the snow anymore. But it's nice. It took me a while. Skiing helps.
Are you a skier?
Winter activities. I am a skier. I learned when I moved to New Hampshire.
Okay.
Our actually, I think it's the oldest winter activities program. This is hearsay. This is there. Who is it? Mark Maron, I think, he's a comedian. I love him. But he said there's only like 7 things for sure, and everything else was told to you by another person, right? This is one of those told to me by another person things.
Okay.
I love that though. So it's not a for sure, but I think our public school that I went through, Kearsarge Regional School District, and specifically the Bradford School, which was not mine, but they have the oldest public school winter activities program in the US. So for like 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, every single year, we got to take a half day as part of our public school and go do winter activities. So I learned to ski through my public school, which is the coolest thing ever. I think it's awesome.
I've snowboarded, tubed,
Yep.
and obviously sled, and that's enough for me.
I see those. Well, I was going to say those are the more dangerous ones.
Really?
Did you know, right?
I didn't know
think
that.
so. I mean, I'm biased completely, but I think so.
See,
I will tell you this. I've crashed a few times as a skier and have always come out on the other side. My mom, we went skiing, or not skiing, we went tubing one time. And it was slick. And she started picking up speed, and at the end of the tubing places, there's always like that giant mountain of snow.
yes.
And you kind of like, you're supposed to like glide up and glide back down.
Yep.
She went clear over it.
No,
like she was in
what?
I'm not kidding. Like she was in Chevy Chase Christmas, like just going straight over it. She was airborne, flew out over all of the ski slopes and everything, and she landed. She cleared the chairlift house by like 2 feet. Yeah. True story.
Those are good movies, but yeah, no, that's.
Oh yeah, that was exactly the moment. It was like it happened in real life too. I tell you, tubing's dangerous.
Trying to think of that image is comical, but also dangerous at the same time.
But also,
like, yes,
terrifying.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. She went to complain, and they were like, "We'll give you free passes." She's like, "This is terrible."
Did she at least accept the free passes?
I think she did get the free passes. I don't know if she ever like took us back. I think she was a little too traumatized.
Yep.
But we did get the free passes. Yeah.
I definitely would have taken the free passes as well.
Oh,
even if I
absolutely.
never was going to go again.
I know. Just like, yeah, I'm taking on principle. I have to take these things. Yeah. Right. So winter sports are good. I like skiing. Skiing's fun. It's good.
Well, if you go someplace warm, you're not going to have it as often, unless you you go to California, and then you can go up north to ski, and then south to enjoy the warm weather. So there you go. You got that.
I know. I've never been to California.
Never?
Isn't that terrible? Never. I know. Wow. Never. I've never been. I've done the whole East Coast. All East Coast, and I haven't really ventured. The farthest west I've gone. I've been to Chicago. And I've been to St. Louis, Missouri, because my last name is St. Louis.
Yeah,
it was an obligation, right?
I was gonna try to make some sort of reference, but I was like, she may look like I was gonna say, she's not from Missouri, but I think you were gonna look at me and say, okay, I've heard this before.
I've heard this before.
You're not original.
Having been to St. Louis, I liked St. Louis. It was great. It was really nice. Their public zoo, everything was like, the public zoo was free. I went in the summer too. It was really hot, but it was so nice to walk around. We saw, oh gosh, where did we go? We went to like these farms and stuff. It was just so cool. I felt like the tourist, and it was awesome. It was great. I liked it a lot.
Midwest, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's
Gateway to the West.
Yep.
The arch. Yeah. Yeah. It was really nice. I liked it a lot. When I have to go back, because when I was there, they were doing tons of construction. So I'm sure it's like all vamped up now. I got to go back.
My experience on the east of exploring the East Coast is one that I will not recommend. I was 17. I take all the money I know. I take
This is a good start.
I take all the money out of my bank account. Unbeknownst to my mother, I told her that I was staying at my friend for 2 weeks.
Oh my gosh.
My friend and I bought those Peter Pan type bus passes.
Yes.
And we went down the entire East Coast. And it was terrifying, but at the time, at that age, you feel invincible, and you can do anything. So I wasn't really worried about the consequences of it. I ended up catching an Atlanta Hawks game. We made it down all the way.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, we made it down all the way to Georgia. So
that's awesome. Actually, that's awesome. That is a good story. That is a good story. My mom, she went to school in Atlanta. Yeah, I've been there. I went there once, Atlanta. I never saw a Hawks game though.
Yeah, at the time I was like, I should be dead.
The idea of a 17-year-old and a couple 17-year-olds, just even the idea of you just attending a Hawks game unsupervised in Atlanta back then, like that instance alone.
The only thing I had going for me was he was able to grow a beard very young. I'm not. I still can't. And we told people we were like 20. That was the only thing we had going
Yep.
for us, that we told
It's
people we're a little on the older side.
the facial hair saved you.
Yeah, it saved him, not me.
Saved him. No, that's funny. That's really funny. Oh my goodness. Yeah, no, I've never done anything like that. No. Military father, I wouldn't have been.
You wouldn't have gone away with it. Yep.
No, I feel like that's a generational thing, though. I feel like all our parents do is tell us, all the crazy stories that they had from when they were kids. And then they were like, but you'll never do that.
Right.
You'll never do that. And you're like, okay. And then I never did. Yep. A lot of other kids, like they rally back.
I pushed the envelope. No. Yeah. That was me.
Yeah, I never did.
I was always mischievous and
I was the opposite.
Didn't like authority.
I had to like learn how to live once I got to college. I was like, oh, I can actually stay up late and hang out. And
you're like, wait, there's a life after 10 p.m.? What?
There's a life. Yeah. And then I became a teacher and now there's no life after 9. 9 o'clock hits. I'm like, guys, we got to go to bed.
Right.
It's late.
Yeah. On a Friday night, you're like, it's 9. Come on, I need to go to sleep.
I cannot rally on a Friday. Really? I gotta tell you, that's the other thing. Like you're no kidding. Like Saturdays are sacred. Like that's the only day I have. If you want me to stay up late, you get Saturday. That's it. And then I'm recovering like all day Sunday because I have to work. But Friday, forget it. I'm useless on a Friday. I try.
Everyone loved Fridays. I always said that it was actually my least favorite day because I was so exhausted from the week. Yep.
Yeah.
For sure.
Absolutely. I don't know. I'm wondering what these other people do all week, where they're like, Friday's great. Like, Friday's not great. Yeah. Friday's so exhausting. Friday's like the pajama day. And then on Saturday, you wake up refreshed. Yep. Like, okay, now I'm good to do stuff.
And then you're dreading Sunday. Oh.
The Sunday scaries. That's what they always call it. Yeah, it's called the Sunday scaries. You're just like, oh, it's Sunday. Monday's imminent. You just know you got so many things you have to do.
It's turning the corner.
It's turning the corner. Yeah.
Sunday, 1:00, I would be like, like it'd be in the back of my mind. It'd be in the back of my mind all day, but 1:00, it's real. This is real.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was brutal. It's brutal. The Sunday scaries were really brutal for a while, especially. So like, and when I changed careers, I think I took kind of like all of not taking all of this is going to, like all my work ethic, like I have a really strong work ethic, almost sometimes to a fault, where like I had to be the person who learned, hey, you can't grade everything. You can't give 110%, because if you give 110% to everything all the time, you're spent. Mm-hmm. So I had to get really good at determining what things needed 110, what things needed 95, and what things you're like, okay, that was a practice run. We're good to go. Mm-hmm. Sundays for the first like 2 years, 2.5, 3 years of my career, maybe up until recently, I would stress all day and I would plan everything
down to the last detail.
It was a lot. It was a little intense. Now it's better.
Good.
Now it's better. But I hear you. The 1:00, I start like getting all my things together, making sure I got stuff, making my to-do lists.
And then you look up and you're like, wait, when did it become 5:30?
That's exactly it. People, everyone, like it's dinner time. You're like, oh no.
Yep.
Or it gets dark.
Yep.
It gets dark outside. And you're like, what happened? Yeah, that's always you're like, you go into a wormhole for a few hours and then you pull yourself back out.
Right.
It's all right though. It's getting better. It's getting better. When the pandemic hit, that was like, I was attached to my desk. When the pandemic hit.
Yeah.
And now things are kind of like, it's sort of getting into a normal cadence again.
A different type of normal. Yeah.
A different type of normal. I think, I think there's so much room for growth. There's so much room for growth coming out of this pandemic. And I think education and healthcare are two of the biggest areas where we should see growth. I'm a little nervous though. Like here in Massachusetts, so we invested so much money into the infrastructure for online teaching. We all got cameras, we all got new laptops, we all got the kids' Chromebooks. We went in one school year from being like, you have a Chromebook set or a laptop or whatever it is set for 2 classes to share. So you had like 30 laptops for 60 kids.
I remember that. You had the carts, right?
Huh?
You had the carts, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The carts, the disaster. Yeah. The messy carts with all the plugs going everywhere. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Drove me nuts. Yeah. So we had the carts, right? And then you had to borrow carts.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody was doing testing, you'd have to be like, oh, I'm using them that day. So there were never enough laptops to go around ever. And then like one year, not the whole nation, but like I would say most districts had to go to one.
Right.
And we had hotspots set up for kids, all this other stuff. And then it became apparent that it was like, no, we got to stop this remote thing. We got to get people back in school. I think it was like the little bit of the stick to the carrot kind of thing,
mm-hmm.
where they said online teaching doesn't count. No remote learning counts. And that was a decision that came from the top. And so because they said no more remote learning counts, it's been frustrating because we can't teach the kids who are out. This whole year, we haven't been able to directly instruct students who are quarantined,
mm-hmm.
students who have COVID, but feel fine. They're asymptomatic. They just can't come to school. And I have students, they've missed like a month of school sometimes. And we had no way of getting them into our classes. We couldn't Zoom them in. We couldn't provide remote instruction. Remote instruction was not, they said, we're closing the door on that. It doesn't count as time on learning. So I don't know. I'm getting a little nervous just because we have the infrastructure. We have really skilled teachers who have scrambled to become the technology whizzes and make all these accommodations and stuff. The kids have learned all these new things. And then it was like, oh, just kidding. We don't need it anymore. But we have it. We have
right.
it.
Right.
I don't know.
I'm a
little
made
nervous.
The adjustments.
Like, dang it. I thought this was the way of the future.
Yeah.
And now we're kind of back to a little like, oh, that's all right.
It's challenging. It's tough. So
yeah,
I know you said that you're still relatively early in your career. Because of the pandemic, I know we're kind of like going into that. Do you kind of feel that you've almost been cheated out of a proper experience as a teacher? Because I'm sure you had some sort of vision as to what it was going to be, and then you get dumped with, hey, here's a global pandemic, and here's remote learning, and all this stuff. So do you feel that you've been cheated in some way?
I feel that every educator in the last 2.5 years, we were all just like, this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I signed up for. This is not what I agreed to. I feel that my experience and the experience of all educators who were newer. So I would say if you started teaching, if this is your 4th year or less. So if you've started teaching in the last four years, you don't have that traditional experience. It's not there. So your first year of teaching is just like baptism by fire. We're throwing you in and you just kind of have to roll with it. I always said, my students I was like, they have really, really great tolerance for ambiguity. That's what I always say. Cause I always be like, what are we doing Miss St. Louis? And be like, I don't know. We'll just find out. Or they're like, we'll head down to to an assembly. And they're like, well, what's going to happen when we get there? I'm going to say, oh, we'll just see. We'll see. So they have really great tolerance for ambiguity because we never knew anything. Then the second year of teaching, halfway through, COVID hit.
So you had one full year.
I had one full year, and it was my very first year of teaching.
Okay.
Yeah. And then the second year, I changed one of my subjects. So first year I taught English and social studies, and I had a teaching partner, which I love. I love the teaching team kind of thing. I'm very I'm all about the team stuff. So I taught English and social studies. My teaching partner taught math and science. Then the second year, we've been movers and shakers since the beginning. The second year, I was like, I have a background in science. I'm a dork about science. She had a background in the social studies, humanities kind of thing, and she loved all that stuff. I was like, well, we should switch. I was like, when science is so language based, we should shake up this weird dichotomy that exists between like the arts and the sciences, like mix it up so that the kids see it all as one thing. And that they're learning the science language where you have to do a lot of reading, analysis, and explanation.
So were you still doing ELA?
Yes, I was.
But then you wanted to do science as well.
ELA and science.
You were a trailblazer then, because that is not.
I know
that is not common.
And I was so excited. I was like, oh, an MCAS, we'll see how it affects their scores. Cause for fifth grade, we do MCAS testing for science, ELA, and math. And so I was super excited about it. And then COVID happened. So my testing, I don't know if it actually worked, because testing, I was like, oh, is testing going to happen? And it never did. They pulled it, which they should have.
Right.
I stand by that. That was an awesome choice. We should not have done any sort of testing. But yeah, I don't know if it worked, but it's still going on. It's still going on because the next year, my third year of teaching, and what ended up being 75% remote, I was told 4 days before the school year started that I was going to be teaching a special and no longer teaching fifth grade ELA and science. 4 days before the school year started. I got a call like 6:50 in the morning on a Friday, and kids were going to be in my room the following Thursday.
Were you upset about that?
I was too panicked to be upset.
Yeah.
It was like crisis mode. And I think we'd been living there for a while in crisis mode. So it was just another thing. And I think, I don't know if this is a personality thing or a career thing. I have no idea. I'd be curious. When something like that happens, when you get that kind of information, it really is, there's like no time to be upset. It's all crisis management in the moment. You're like, well, I can deal with my emotions and how I feel later, because I need to create something and make a choice. So I had to make a decision about what subject I would teach. That was my like consolation prize. Like, you're not teaching fifth grade ELA and science. So all the subject, like all the plans I had, all of that gone. And now I'm going to teach fifth grade through eighth grade. So the fifth grade was the oldest kids I've ever taught before that. So now I'm teaching fifth grade. They're very different than eighth graders.
Yep.
I'm teaching fifth grade through eighth grade. And as a consolation, it's like, you can teach whatever you want.
So what'd you choose?
So what did I do? I invented a class.
And what was the class that you invented?
Called social emotional learning. And it is not an unfamiliar term. It's actually getting a lot more attention and a lot more traction. The term itself has been around for, 30 years now, almost. CASEL, CASEL, which is the Collaborative for Academic and Social Emotional Learning, has been around since 1994. And they're kind of the group that sort of led the charge on social emotional learning. But what it basically is like all those soft skills that we don't usually explicitly teach to kids in school. So if you're a student who needs an individualized education plan, or you have additional pull-out services where they see that you are maybe deficient or lacking in some area of your social emotional well-being, maybe you have a hard time communicating with kids your age, maybe you have a hard time self-regulating, then kids get services and they're pulled out. But in general, we don't really teach past the pre-K, kindergarten, first grade kind of early childhood area. We don't really teach responsible decision-making or self-management or self-awareness, social awareness, and relationship skills. And those are the 5 big tenets of CASEL. So those are kind of like the areas.
They're tent poles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then everything social emotional falls underneath that tent. I love that. Yeah. Everything falls underneath that. And so, I thought to myself, it was proposed or suggested. They were like, maybe you can do an art class. The kids could do art online, or you could do, writing help or a math help class or something. And I thought, what do kids need? What do they really need right now? And I mean, they had the, rug pulled out from under them, March 13th, 2020. It was Friday the 13th. Never forget that. They were told, you're going to be out of school for 2 weeks. They left their stuff. Like, they left everything in the lockers.
Yeah.
They left everything there. And then I remember I didn't even have a desk set up. I was sitting on the floor. I taught off the floor in front of my coffee table for months, because every single week you're watching the TV and you're just like, all right, when are they going to open schools? And, you know, we had phone calls with kids, with parents. We had, I remember, gosh, there was one parent who had COVID. Her child was in my class, and we found out that the parent had COVID. The parent was self-isolating. This was like the early days. We didn't know anything. They were self-isolating in their bedroom. And the kids, it was, they had a fifth grader and I think an older child who had learning disabilities. They were out in the main house, the main area of the apartment. And grandma would sometimes come by and stay with them and check on them and everything else. But I think grandma had to work. Mom couldn't work. And I remember having a phone call with the mom and just saying, you know, what's up? How can I help? Don't worry about school. You know, just let us know if you need anything. This is my number. You can call the school if you need anything. Somebody's answering that line. And it was just like, it was just craziness. So these kids are going through all this stuff. There's all this uncertainty. And then lo and behold, some of them didn't go back to school until April the following year. And then some kids, because it was an option, didn't go back to school until September of 2021. So there were 18 months where some students never saw another person their own age. And that's insane to me.
That's wow. That I'm at
right?
a loss for. When you put it in that perspective,
Yeah.
I'm at a loss of words for it, because
Yeah.
I do remember okay, like this school district is closing for 1 week. This school district's everyone was kind of doing their own thing. Then all of a sudden it was no, the whole state of Massachusetts, 2 weeks.
Yep. 2 weeks.
Then another 2 weeks. And then another 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And then it finally was like, okay, we're actually done for the year.
And they didn't make that call until I think it was sometime in May. They didn't make the call until sometime in May.
I remember that because some high schools were still trying to do prom. They were still trying to.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. We had no idea. And it was, you know, early days of COVID. So we didn't know what it was, how serious it was. There was no information. And I remember I had some students who would show up to school and they wanted to wear masks. And the guidance that I received as a teacher was to not let students wear masks because it didn't prove to be effective against whatever this was. And we didn't want to scare other people.
Wow. And
that was the guidance that I received as a teacher, was that we shouldn't be letting kids wear. Isn't that insane?
Would you have allowed it?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah. It was really only one student. And I was like, hey, if this is what's helping you be here and making you feel safe. They showed up, they had a plastic baggie with masks, rubber gloves, hand sanitizer, and you just have to think about the parent.
Was this
home.
Prior to it gaining the steam that it had? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So
prior to the shutdown, it was like that week. And I mean, can you imagine? I'm just trying to put myself in that family's shoes, to have to send their kid to school where you're like, here's your kit of masks and rubber gloves and things like that. So you're like, the families were scared and they were still sending their kids in. There was a lot, there was a lot that we didn't know. There were a lot of, and even still we're seeing it, there's a lot of social anxiety that is coming from that experience.
Mm-hmm.
And if a student is 10 years old, that's, you know, a fifth of their life has been spent during COVID.
Right.
And yeah, it's crazy to think about. And these kids, so if you're in fifth grade this year, the last normal from September to June, normal school year you were in second grade. Isn't that crazy?
When you say it like that, it really puts it in perspective, because you don't think about that.
You don't think about it. You don't think about it that way. But so the kids, they're dealing with all of that. And we have students who are in our building. They're in middle school this year for the first time. And the middle school teachers, we all have middle school level expectations that we have had to really scale back and realize the last time these kids were in a building or in a room with their peers, they were in third grade. That was the last time for some of them.
Right.
And that's crazy to think about. And you adjust that, of course, for anything, going up the scale, you know, all the way to 12th grade and beyond. But I think that I was teaching middle school. I think that cohort of students is the probably the group that's most affected, because I think they notice it the most.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not yet equipped with those soft skills, with the social emotional skills to manage it. And so that's kind of where I think social emotional learning is important across the whole board. I think you should be teaching it, explicitly well beyond pre-K and kindergarten, because things change.
Mm-hmm.
The way I talk to people when I'm in kindergarten and be kind to people and share in kindergarten is not the same as it is in middle school, but it's still important.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that this age group, I think they really need it.
So a combination of your personal beliefs, the pandemic, that's what really kind of, I guess, developed this concept of you wanting to teach that.
I think so. And I also, there's a couple other factors. Like I said, I'm a dork when it comes to science. I love science and biology. I declared it for a reason. I took anatomy and physiology like for fun 3 times. I took it like a full year class in college. I did a summer course in high school. I did AP Bio. I love it. I think it's so interesting. Because, that's us. I was like, this is like the computer manual for you as a human. And so teaching kids about their brain and everything, and they didn't know any of this stuff, and it's just really cool. So I think that also played into it. And the other thing that really helped out, and put it on my radar, was a family member who was pursuing their doctorate, actually right before the pandemic, completed a study in which they implemented a mindfulness guided meditation app in a high school classroom. And so seeing the feedback there, so that kind of put it on my radar that this person right before COVID, and leading up to it, and then they're still continuing, they're still finishing up their doctorate, but they kind of were talking about that a lot. And so that kind of put it on my radar. I was like, oh yeah, mindfulness. Oh yeah, SEL. I had an opportunity as a student teacher to also partake in a mindfulness / meditation. They're different things, but this was like a guided meditation kind of thing. It was professional development, and it lasted an entire year, and it was just kind of neat to have that exposure as well. So through all of that, I was like, this is what these kids really need. And then from then it was just like building the plane as you flew it. I had long days. I'm not exaggerating, like 14-hour days, right? Back to back every single day, because I had to make all of the materials. There were things online, of course, but the middle school age is really, it's underserved. There's lots of stuff out there for college and high school, and there's lots of things out there for little kids, but that, like, I'm too cool for this kind of age range,
Right?
But they're still kids.
Yep.
Yeah, they're underserved.
Too cool for school.
They're too cool for school. They really are. It's so funny because you see that transition. The 5th graders are all gung-ho. They're like super into whatever you're doing. 6th graders, that kind of waned. 7th graders are the most self-conscious, awkward kids ever. And then the 8th graders, you can kind of level with them. You're like, all right, like I have a rule in my class, and it's I'm not Dora the Explorer. And so I'm like, that moment when Dora the Explorer, and then which the reference is going to fade after a certain point. These kids won't know who that is. But I'm like, when it's like, where is it? And then there's that awkward pause. And then you just go, good. Or like, there it is. I was like, I'm not Dora. And they love that. They love that rule. So the 8th graders, at least, I'm like, guys, I'm not Dora. They're like, okay, all right, Miss St. Louis, we'll help you out.
Right.
I'm like, thank you. But yeah, it's an underserved age group for social emotional. So I was creating everything, all the slides, all the questions, all the Google Forms, all the assessments. Yeah.
So,
and I did it.
Are you making the curriculum?
Yeah, I am.
Wow.
Yeah. So I did it last year and it was a pilot program kind of thing. It was just supposed to be 1 year, but it got such awesome feedback and the kids really loved it. And I mean, I had students who would send unsolicited emails or messages to me saying and I'm still getting them saying things like, your class really helped me, or you don't know how much it really helped me to have SEL last year. Or, I like some kids, they're like, oh, I was in a really dark place. I was really struggling and your class made a huge difference. And I would get all that feedback from the kids, it just became apparent this is something that they really, really need. So I made one class last year, and whether you were in 5th grade or 8th grade, it was kind of the same thing. And it was a general overview, a 30-day class. And this year we decided to keep it. So I championed for it along with my my school social worker. We kind of, the two of us, tag teamed and advocated for it. But this year I'm creating new curriculum because I have to differentiate across 4 grade levels. So now you can't have the same exact thing, right? So I have a 5th grade curriculum, a 6th grade curriculum, a 7th grade, and an 8th grade. It is so, which breaks down to 100 different lessons.
Your breakdown of the middle school is so on point.
On point.
It's so accurate. It's the 5th grade. Yeah. I'm still a kid. 6th grade, they'll do it half of the time. 7th grade, everyone is judging everyone, and
Absolutely.
And 8th grade, it's like, all right, come on, like I'm done. Like, just can we get out of this situation? They don't want to be a part of it. So no, I think you hit the nail on the head, and I think it's so important because I think even for myself, I had challenges, I had trials and in those grades, and but to think about having a class like this, I think it would have been life-changing for any person. Honestly, that's amazing work because you're learning, you're growing, you're adjusting, and it's challenging. That's tough.
It's tough stuff. But you know what? I think, just to have the kids hear that message, and maybe they get it at home, maybe they don't, maybe they get it from other teachers, but maybe not, to have that message that things are hard and that's okay. And, that we have to kind of keep things in perspective and know that our feelings, we have multiple feelings every day, and that things move forward. You can't get stuck in one place. And sometimes when you feel like you're stuck, maybe you feel, oh my God, I'll always be this awkward, or, oh, I'll never get better at this class, or middle school's never going to end, or anything. Just to have somebody else saying, you know what, there are times when things are hard, and there are times when things are really great, and you can't have the good without the bad. And you put it in different perspectives for different kids. But, I always tell the 5th graders, they're so candid about their questions too. They'll ask things like, is it really bad if you try to not feel sad? Those kinds of questions. And it's like, no, well, feeling sad is normal.
Right.
And it's important to notice that when you feel sad, you feel sad. It's important to handle it. And that's what our class is really about. But it's not about making you happy all the time. Because I said, if you were happy 100% of the time, I said, people look at you like you're a crazy person. And then they always smile and laugh. And they're like, yeah. I was like, yeah. It's like, feelings are normal. So
feelings and emotions aren't the issues. It's what you do.
It's what you do.
It's how you handle them. You can be mad, you can be sad, happy.
Absolutely.
However you handle it. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we talk about that. We talk about interpersonal relationships, which has been, I think that's taken a big hit from COVID. It's taken a massive hit. We see it with adults, right? We see it with adults all the time, where it's like, you haven't come out from behind your computer in 2 years, and it shows, and the kids, you see it too. They were playing, their entire interpersonal interactions for some of them was exclusively like through Xbox Live, where people are throwing insults left and right. People, they'd say whatever they want because they're hidden behind a screen. And then you come to my class and we got to talk about, well, you know what? You got to know the difference. You got to know the difference between the online culture and the school culture. You got to remember that there's people on the other end of these things. And how do you get along with people that you're not really friends with? And how do you, as a 5th grader said it, how do you meet old friends? That's what they said at the beginning of the year. They're like, it's like meeting our old friends. Like, how do you meet people where they are now versus the idea that I have of who they were before COVID? And it's all these kinds of conversations where it's like, you got to give people room to change and room to grow.
Yes.
And it's important for them to have that message, where it's like, we used to be really good friends, and Now we don't talk a lot. It's like, well, it doesn't mean that they don't like you, but naturally people change and maybe you have different things in common. And I wish I had somebody telling me that sort of stuff when I was in middle school, because it's a challenging time where developmentally kids are experimenting with their social life.
Yes.
They're transitioning from, and you see it because they're transitioning from the very needy, I have to have adults help me and do everything world of elementary school to the super independent, you are becoming an adult world of high school. And the transition is middle school. Think about that. Like it's so underserved. It's such an
really
underserved age, right?
Yes.
But it's like the most important.
Wow.
I told my 8th graders, and this is fascinating. And even this tidbit alone would have helped me as a middle schooler. Your brain, right? So this is kind of neat. Your brain develops from back to front. And to the front, very front, right behind your forehead is the prefrontal cortex. And that's where you're in charge of planning, decision making, your in-depth analysis, all that stuff. When you enter puberty and your body and brain, like everything, goes from being little kid to adult, the prefrontal cortex, like 50% of those neural connections are cut and rearranged. Right? So you literally, you're
for the people who can't see, my expression is
that's
yes.
a lot. It's
yes.
You're losing half your mind. It's a lot. They're all being cut. From the time we're born, our neural connections are being pruned or cut back and being rearranged. But when you're a teenager and when you enter puberty, it happens at a crazy rate. It is like the second birth of the brain, because the things you don't use get cut real fast. And I always use this as, it's really relevant for my student population, languages. If anybody spoke a language when they were younger and then they went to school and stopped practicing it, it's going to be harder for them to speak. So I often say, did you ever talk to your grandparents in Khmer or in Spanish or in Portuguese when you were little? And then you stop speaking it and they go, yeah. I said, is it harder now? And they go, yeah. I'm like, well, you got to keep it up, because the things that you practice also during puberty become protected with the myelin sheath. And myelin's like this fatty protein kind of insulator. It's like that blue plastic around the cord, right? But it actually helps messages travel a lot faster. It protects those neural pathways a little bit more. So the things that you practice become way faster during puberty. And the things that you don't practice physically get cut away. And so it's really incredible.
It is, because I think about myself, and prior to 6th or 7th grade, I drew all the time. Now I draw and I feel like I'm the best I can do is stick figures. And my mother still has photos or pictures rather of me drawing, and she's like, yeah, you did this when you were 10. And I was like, man, I would have been the next Picasso if I had kept going. And then I cut those cords. So that's wild.
Isn't it crazy? And it's a scientific reason. And I think that's kind of it. It's kind of neat. It's like, it's weird how I kind of landed in SEL right now. And it combines, my love of science, my love of students, and my love of teaching all together, because we're all just science. We're electricity and chemistry. And that's kind of what it breaks down to. And so, it really is. It's like the how to be a human class and the how to be a human manual. This is another crazy thing that my kids are always like, what? I'm like, I didn't know this until I started researching and learning about it on my own. If I asked you, when do you think, you might already know, when do you think the body stops growing? And when do you think the brain kind of stops? Like, when do we become adult? When do you think?
So I don't know if this is true, but I read something that women obviously develop quicker than men.
We do.
And so their bodies stop at around 13, 14, but their brain is already fully developed at like 20 or 21. But I read something, and I, again, don't know if this is true. I might be rebuked about it right now by Lindsey. But apparently men, it's not till like 16, 17 where they physically stop. but then their brain doesn't fully develop till like 29, 30. I don't know if that's right. I don't know. So I want to hear from you. Am I where am I? Where am I?
You're kind of in the ballpark, actually.
Okay,
You
I'll
have
take
to remember
ballpark.
too that, yeah, I mean, every person, I love this. This is a quote from Ted Lasso of all things, but every person is a different person. I love that show. It's so good. But every person is a different person. I love that. And it's so true, right? Every person's a different person. So we have to remember that. But so on the end plates of our bones typically cap off around age 25. Age 25.
Okay.
Your brain, same thing. It's closer to, we think that the men always develop later. It's women also, our brains, they're most plastic, meaning the most malleable and changeable until age 25. So 25 is like the golden age. Men, it typically extends a little bit longer. Women, it does typically kind of stop before then. And that's just because of the time of puberty and onset of puberty. But again, every person's a different person. We all know people who started puberty younger and people who started later. And obviously everything is adjusted and shifted. This is kind of nuts too. And this is a personal experience where I learned too. I thought I was done growing. I've been 5'6" since I was 12. That's it. I was the tallest kid, and then I stopped and everyone else kept going around me. I remember that. I remember coming back to school in 7th grade and like all the boys were way taller than me. I was like, this is so bizarre. But I stopped. I was always, I've been the same size since I was 12 years old. But it we continue growing, and I never had braces or anything like that. And the older I got, I had wisdom teeth taken out and all this other stuff. And then I was like, oh my gosh, my teeth are getting so jacked up as an adult. I was like, I didn't think this was going to happen. I thought I escaped it. And they're like, no, it's the 21-year-old temporomandibular growth spurt. I was like, the what? They're like, yeah, everybody's jaw grows when they're like in their early 20s. I was like, why don't we know this?
We really don't.
We don't know any of this. We don't know any. It's amazing to me, and it really is like mind-blowing how little we know about ourselves as human beings.
It's kind of scary. It's kind of surreal.
Right?
Like, it is. It's funny you say 25 because I feel like that's when I started falling apart after I turned 25.
Oh yeah, that was me.
I'm like, my joints hurt all the time. Everything.
Oh, yeah.
All of a sudden I have a torn knee. Like,
yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And
Just
how I got it.
For that.
How I got it. Slipping down one step and missing one step.
Oh my
the last step, which everyone does. Everyone misses.
It's always the last step. It's always the last one.
Or misses when they go up the stairs, they miss the last one.
Yeah, really like that heart-stopping moment.
Yes.
Like, oh my god.
I've done that hundreds of times in my life. All of a sudden, this one time I did it, torn knee. So
yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy too. I'm experiencing that sort of stuff too. And I had a coworker who she was on vacation with her family, and her daughter had won a prize, and she was like jokingly reaching. She's like, I'm gonna take it, and she stepped wrong and tore her calf muscle.
Are you serious?
I'm not kidding.
Wow,
isn't that insane?
Like the craziest things.
How does this
like day-to-day things?
Oh, I know,
because our bodies are falling apart.
We're falling apart. I know, it really puts stuff in perspective too when you think about all these professional athletes who are playing it. Like, I'm not old, but they're playing at my age, and I'm like, I couldn't do that. I was like, I had to stop because I had indigestion during my high knees the other day. I was like, this is not. I was like, I did some plank jacks, and I was like, oh, my elbow's a little stiff.
I did some yoga yesterday, and I'm like, oh my goodness, it felt great at the time, but now I wake up this morning and I'm like,
sore.
I know. Like, why am I so sore? Over yoga. I used to be a 3-season athlete, and here I am over yoga.
Most insulting one though is like when you sleep wrong. I have the worst back injury I ever had. I did when I was sleeping. I woke up one day and I couldn't get out of bed. I had to like swing my legs over the edge and push myself up, and I like couldn't run or walk heavily for a while. I had the worst back injury I ever had. I did it while I was sleeping.
What was it, like a thoracic spine type of deal?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I had just like while I like had tweaked something.
Yep,
so
what
what
had
had happened,
same thing.
like I was sleeping all twisted, and then I just like shifted the exact wrong way, and it was like game over. For like a week and a half, I like was walking around like this, and I couldn't have a lot of force, and like even walking, if my arms were doing like the upward downward motion hurt. I was like, this is sad. It's so sad.
I have a similar thing. One time there was water on a bouncy house and I went to go, because it rained, I went to lift it up. I just pushed it up. All of a sudden, I'm like, oh my gosh, my back. And I I was done for like 2 weeks.
Yeah.
A solid 2 weeks. Similar. I couldn't walk. And that's why I asked if it was because I knew that pain. I was like, oh.
Yeah. Yep. And it's just like that's exactly what it is. Or I almost hurt I've never had a shoulder anything. I have a weighted blanket. It's 15 pounds. And I like casually went to pick it up the other day and I was like, oh, like, idiot. It's 15 pounds. I mean, to be fair, it's 15 pounds. Like I wouldn't go around slinging around like a 15-pound dumbbell, but I was just like trying to.
That is true. And the weight is distributed awkwardly on a blanket.
It was so awkward.
Right.
Like I tried to grab it and like bring it up onto the bed. And it was like, oh my God, I think I hurt my shoulder. Picking up a blanket. You gotta add the weighted.
You gotta add the weighted before that.
I have to add the weighted.
If you just say I think I tore my or I think I jacked up my shoulder with a blanket.
I know.
Oh,
well, I had a family member tell me one time they like really hurt their back, and I was like, "What'd you do?" And they were like, "Oh, And then they told me on the side, they're like, "I'll tell you, I was taking my pants off," and I was like, "What?" They had tweaked it. I was like, this is what I have to look forward to.
The littlest injuries happen, and you wouldn't expect it. So I want to go back to the SEL thing for a second.
Yes.
Because I want to share this. I definitely think that would have been so productive even for myself. Because when I was growing up, some people may or may not know this. Our middle school, there was a lot of bullying. It was really bad. Bullying wasn't as heightened and as recognized until I want to say maybe my senior year of high school. So I kind of was shifting out of that. I mean, I still acknowledged it, but it's definitely was not as heightened or as noticed. And I think a lot of the times a program like an SEL program would have helped those children who were either dealing with bullies or being bullies themselves. I think that's just, I hope that people can hear this and really take what you do. And I think you're doing great work because it's remarkable to just, hey, here you go. You have to start this program. It has to be successful. If it's not successful, it's on your head. And best of luck to you. But it sounds like you're doing great. It sounds like you're thriving, and kudos. Because I would not have reacted that way, personally speaking. I probably would have cowered and cried and
like freaked out in the moment.
Yep.
Yeah,
I would have needed an SEL teacher at that.
Yeah,
if someone had said, "Hey, you need a program," I would have needed an SEL teacher for some coping strategies.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Like but that's the thing, and that's what it's for. It's and we have bullying. Like some of my topics, I'm trying to think. We kind of go through like community building and stuff like that. We learn about the brain and the physiology. I think that's so important. And we scale it up. The older you are, the more detail you learn, the more detail you can manage. We teach kids to name the parts of the brain, especially the prefrontal cortex and the amygdala, which controls our emotions. We teach them to name those so that they actually, I think it's very empowering, right? To know
about
I'm
yourself.
Not just like, it gives you the vocabulary you can use to talk about it. And it helps. It's like, why am I feeling this way? Or why am I freaking out? It's like, oh, because my amygdala senses that this is a threat, even though it really isn't.
Right.
Okay. Well, now knowing that, I can act a different way. So we do that. We talk about empathy. That's a big one. Empathy.
There's not a lot of that going around nowadays.
There's not. Yeah. It's putting yourself in other people's shoes. And one of my big empathy moments. So I thought this was so funny. I'm pretty sure it was empathy. I remember when Biden won the presidency and wherever he was, he had they have that big thing where he comes out, and it was so different because it's all COVID. It couldn't happen indoors. They were outside somewhere, and there's like all of the banners and all this other stuff. And the word empathy was up there. And I was like, what? No way. So, but there's a need for it. At least it's being recognized nationally. Absolutely. There's not a lot going around, but yeah, being able to put yourself in another person's shoes. That's what it is basically. And there's not a lot of that. We talk about identity, which which some people think is so taboo, but it's just providing kids the room to think about themselves. That really is it. And if they have questions, they can ask me questions.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, I think it's so important. Kids are experimenting with their identity more than I think we ever did. Like
Right.
when you were in middle school, I don't know if you experimented, if there's like people go through their skater phase, or they're like, maybe I'm going to wear mesh sleeves and I'm going to be goth for like a year or whatever. Like, or I'm going to get highlights. Like that's going to be a thing. We're going to highlight the hair. But now kids aren't experimenting in that way so much anymore. They're experimenting, you know, we've got pronouns, we've got kids
Right.
experimenting with different labels, with like sexuality labels, and they're just trying to figure out who they are.
Mm-hmm.
I think it scares people sometimes because of stereotypes and stigma that exists around different identities. But it's I think kids need room to think about themselves. And so when we talk about identity, it's mostly about like providing the room to answer questions if they have it. But then really what we talk about, it's not all that stuff. That's like health teacher stuff. For us, it's like, how does my identity drive who I become as a person?
Right.
How do my values affect my decisions? Right? All that kind of stuff. And
No,
it's
you're
like,
totally
so we talk
right.
about that and like and bullying and stereotyping and interpersonal stuff. And that's like the cherry on top. And by the time we get talking about bullying and stereotyping, the kids are usually pretty incensed over it.
Mm-hmm. Like
And
it
we have
gets
to make
them
sure
mad,
that,
right? Like
huh?
like it gets. I shouldn't say mad. That was the
Oh yeah, no, it does. They're
right
indignant.
because they're
They're incensed about some of,
like,
especially
how
with
could someone
stereotyping.
bully or how could someone do this? Yes.
Yeah, they get it. And but we talk about that too, where it's like, you know what? Do you think, and it's the empathy and perspective taking. Does the bad guy always think they're the bad guy?
No. I did a class on this, and we were talking about heroes and
Yes.
superheroes and supervillains, and I said it's so crazy because I think those decision makers in those big time movie companies, they know.
Mm-hmm.
I think they
Yeah.
know that we're in this new transition of trying to find out who you are and understanding that people go through trials and tribulations that have made them who they are to this day. So
Mm-hmm.
they are doing more movies of the bad
Yeah.
guy's point of view,
Yeah.
but we relate more towards a person who has, like for example, Maleficent,
Yes.
or like Joker, we
Yes.
relate more towards someone who's been outcasted and
Yep.
ostracized and has mental health issues rather than a 6'4" gorgeous
Mm-hmm.
man who has arms bigger than my chest. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's not, we don't relate to those type. They're cool, don't get me wrong,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't relate to that as much. So I think they know that we relate to those type of people more
Mm-hmm. We
nowadays.
do. And it's true. We don't have the background stories, and we don't see, and although we oftentimes identify with the villain because we see the villain as flawed. It's interesting because I'm going to push it even like a step further. When we see the hero, the media doesn't show the flaw of the hero, right? A lot of
Right.
times they don't.
Right.
Sometimes they do, and that's
Sometimes.
great. That's a good story. But imagine you have this like 6 foot tall, really muscular guy or something. And you're like, this is the hero, and they're doing all this other stuff. But and a lot of times movies they dig into this, but it's like, why are they like that? And everybody, I think that the thing is like everybody has hard times. Maybe they were bullied when they were younger, and they felt they had to get strong, and this was one of their ways of like getting back. Is there, I'm really strong now, nobody can beat up on me. Or maybe they were pressured, and maybe they always felt pressure to be perfect, and they had to kind of be the stronger person or whatever it is. And it's interesting because I think we forget that, as complex and nuanced and elaborate as all of our lives and our stories and everything are. And I love that you have this podcast where you talk to people about it, because every person's a different person,
Yes.
and we all have these crazy stories and these stepping stones that lead us to where we are. Think about this, like every single other human on earth has that too. And it's really crazy to think about, like, whenever we look at somebody, we only see the surface. And we talk in identity, we talk about identity markers in my class. And those identity markers are the things that it's just putting a name to something that it's part of who you are. So clothing, my skin color, my ethnicity, the language I speak, my culture, like all that. And we talk about the visible versus the invisible. Visible identity markers, right? The things you see. You see my hair color, you see the color of my skin, you see the clothes I wear, you can see the shoes on my feet, you can see the things, my belongings, right? You can see my facial expression. And then we talk about invisible, the things that are important to me, my religion, my race, my language, my ethnicity, my values, my experiences. We talk about all of that. And then I ask the kids, all right, and they get that. I ask them, I say, which one do you think is more important? Which one is more important to you and for who you are? And they always say invisible, all those invisible things. And I'm like, yeah, think about that for a second. All the things that are important to us about who we are the things that other people can't see. And so when you approach a person or a situation and keep that in mind, where you're like, wow, I'm seeing only the stuff on the surface, but all the things that really make this person who they are is something that I can't see. It's like all of a sudden your mind's opened up a little bit. And it's just kind of a cool message. And it's a cool thought experiment to have where you're like, oh yeah. And then just like, how do you get to know those people? Sometimes you can't know everybody. There's too many people on earth, but
right.
Having a conversation, that's another skill that it's kind of gone by the wayside a little bit.
As you were guiding that exercise, I was doing it in my head, and I was like, wow.
Isn't that cool?
Honestly,
yeah.
I'm like speechless. Like that's
neat.
that is neat.
I think it's really needed. I truly believe this. Like, I think that if every person, if every student in the US had the opportunity to have those thought experiments and to put them into practice from the time that they're in kindergarten all the way through 12th grade and beyond, I really think that we would see a shift in the culture of how and how we treat each other. And I think in our understanding, I would hope that we would see that. It's challenging, especially in a culture where for our young people, so much of their understanding is driven by what they see, like TikTok, right. Social media, TV, all this other stuff, video games, right? It's all just driven by what they see. And their brains have developed to really jump to conclusions really fast. The media has done that. The media creates stereotypes and archetypes because they want we have to tell a whole story in 90 minutes. Okay, I need you to judge these people. I need you to understand that when this guy walks in with the leather jacket and the sunglasses and whatever, like that, he's that archetype, right?
Yeah.
They want, right? You have to, because you can't dive into his backstory. We have 90 minutes. So they live in this world where that's what it is. And they're encouraged by their experiences to judge people. And humans like to judge. We learn by attaching new information to existing information.
Yep.
And that's our schema, right? Our schema is all the things we know. And we attach new things in. It's like plugging it in, almost like this giant web. And because we do that, we judge. We judge really quickly. And we try to make quick assessments. And we need to do that from a physiological and evolutionary kind of standpoint to make sure we're safe.
I was going to say that is evolutionary because there's I'm walking in the woods. Is that a bear going to attack me or is that just a bush? So,
right.
Yes. Yep.
Which is tricky though, when you apply those same scientific principles, because humans haven't changed a lot.
No,
we have not. We're
very simple creatures.
We're very simple. Yeah. We're very simple. We're like lucky. We're lucky that we were able to do all the things we can and that like dolphins don't run the world or something. Cause we're very simple creatures. Yep. We're very simple. And the problem that exists with us in today's society, and I think that our young people need help navigating, is that our brains were created during a time when there were bears and saber-toothed tigers and all this crazy danger stuff and everything else happening, and you couldn't trust, and you had to develop relationships very carefully and all this other stuff. And then flash forward, here we are. Now I'm walking down the street and I'm walking through the woods or whatever. I'm not thinking, is that a bear or a bush? I'm thinking, is that person a dangerous person.
Yep.
And because my society, and because I live in a world where media and society has told me certain information in my schema, right? All my knowledge tells me certain things about bad people and about dangerous situations. I'm logically, like, what my brain's going to do is going to jump to conclusion that this person's bad, this person's not, this person's safe, this person isn't. And it's dangerous because, like you said, talking about empathy, we don't have the whole story. We can only see what's on the outside. And it's challenging. It's very challenging, especially when we get the messages that we continue to get from our experiences and from the world. It's a complex time to grow up. Really is. It's very complex.
As stated, we're simple creatures with a whole lot of complex scenarios around us and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I want to transition into this. You work with kids, you're day to day, you're an SEL teacher, but you're also doing after school stuff too.
I am.
Yeah. So what's that about?
Yeah. So this year and through there's a grant that came through, and through that grant we were able as a district to provide lots of additional after school programming for our students. So this year is the first year since I've been teaching there, not very long, but the first year in a while, I think, that we've had a robust after school program. And that includes sports club, it has gaming club, drawing club. We've got homework club that we've always had, which is an awesome thing to provide for kids. And then I decided to create a drama club for the first time in a long time. So our school is very old, and our stage, we don't really have a backstage. I don't even think we have working lights on our stage. I think it's like you hit the light switch and everything's on or nothing's on. I don't even know. I don't know what's going to happen, but we have a drama club. And and it's right now, it's like I'm the one-man band. We're trying to get more people. I think we'll have some high schoolers coming they need some volunteer hours.
Right.
And we're going to get them involved, which is awesome. But it's really like a grassroots drama club kind of thing. And I just have to share this quick moment because we meet twice a week, Tuesdays, Thursdays, from right after school until 4:00. One of the things that we're doing this year, this is awesome, and it's kind of like become its own thing and it's run away from me a little bit, but in a great way. Normally, for anti-bullying and promoting a healthy school culture, we would have other groups come and perform for our students. So this is like educational theater kind of stuff, right? That they put on a show, they ask the kids questions, and it's like this whole big thing. But because of
I've
COVID,
seen those guys and girls who go in who act and all that, right?
Yes, exactly. Okay. Yeah. So
I was trying to think about it. Yes,
exactly. So it's like they come in, they watch a show. It's like the stereotypical, like, oh, pause, freeze. Now what just happened? Like, it's so great. I love it. It's so cheesy. The kids are like torn between loving it and hating it because they're in middle school, and so you can't love anything that's too cheesy because then you're not cool. But they normally would come in, and it was an awesome experience. It was great. But because of COVID, we can't really do that. We can't have big assemblies. We're still trying to maintain, somewhat of distancing and limiting people in certain rooms and stuff. So we can't do that. So the drama club, our very first performance, is actually student skits written to replace that anti-bullying performance. So they're anti-bullying skits. The students were given worksheets, they were given guidance, we had big conversations, they broke themselves up into groups, and they created issues and thought of issues that were relevant to our school and our culture in the current year. A lot of them came up with things like body shaming. A lot of them thought of things like name calling, physical bullying, where they're like bumping into people a little bit. Some of them took it and ran with it. Where like one group like they didn't actually do this, but they like gave someone a swirly, and they didn't know what it was called. I thought it was great. They had another teacher who's like, "Are you giving somebody a swirly?" And they're like, "A what?" I was like, "Welcome to like all the 80s movies ever."
Right.
But they took it and ran with it. I had this awesome moment. So I'm like one adult. I'm one adult. I have 30 kids in this program. And I have more they keep asking me if they can join. I'm like, not until we have more people over the age of 18, because I can't manage them all because there's not enough room. So we have kids in the room next door setting up things. They have an iPad on a stand. They're filming one scene here. We have other kids in the cafeteria filming a scene. And it's just like, they're all over the place. Yesterday, we had to film a scene. This was so cool. It was a group of fifth graders making this skit, and they needed extras. So they recruited some additional eighth graders, sixth graders, and seventh graders who were currently unoccupied. And they all went down to the library, and this little fifth grader is like talking to them saying, okay, this is what you're going to do. And you need to do this. And they're like directing and stuff.
He's going to be a director. They're
right?
going to be a director one day.
So they directed. It was awesome. And then they had like their script. Oops, sorry, I'm like hitting my mic. They had their script and everything. They're like, oh yeah, you do this, you do that. Okay, ready? Oh no. And you can see, like, as a teacher, I love these moments because you just kind of fade into the background and you can see there's like frustration about these people talking and not listening. You're like, all right, we'll see how this goes. The fifth graders were directing and acting, and the eighth graders stepped in to film. So we had two eighth graders. So the eighth graders are filming, the fifth graders telling them what to do. And they're like chit-chatting, all this other stuff. And then finally they're like, okay, we're going to start. Okay, ready? And they have action. And then it's like, it's so quiet. And everyone's just super focused. And they're filming and they're doing the scene. And then afterward, they're like, okay, cut. And then everyone's like super loud and so excited. And I have a picture on my phone. And it's one of those things where, like, I wish the visuals would go along with the audio here. But I snapped a picture on my phone because it was like a whole bunch of kids. I'll hold up to the camera so at least you can see. But you got like 10 kids crowded around a tiny little cell phone in the library. This little fifth grader showing her cell phone. You have all these students trying to watch and see the playback. And it was just one of those moments where I took a picture. I was like, all right, this is what it's about. So I don't know what our show is going to look like in the spring, where we have the musical and all this other stuff. And like, I don't know if anyone can read music. We don't really have that many music programs right now up and running, but that's what it's all about. It's been really great to see the kids, working together to create these things. And it's a challenge for me as a teacher to be so hands-off, but it is awesome. It's really cool. It's really cool to see that moment happening from the kids from fifth grade to eighth grade working together and being so excited about this thing they're creating. It's really cool.
I can't wait to hear about the finished product. Even if there's some, it's not the highest end production.
Oh, absolutely.
The fact that they're going to accomplish a goal.
Yes.
That's a win. That's a win.
That exactly. I mean, I'm going to send that picture. It's a terrible picture. I've got like my old Samsung phone over here. I'm going to send that picture to our principal and to our after school program coordinator guy. I'm just like, I was so jazzed. I was like, this is exactly what it's about. It's about the kids coming together and finishing something and making something from start to finish. This was theirs. They did the scripts, they printed them out, they highlighted it. They, some of them they have costumes. This one student, I love it. Her character wears like winged eyeliner. It took them like 20 minutes to get the winged eyeliner right. I was like, this is great. And it's completely theirs. It's completely theirs. And they've collaborated to create this. I can't wait to see it. It, like you said, the finished product, we're in middle school. It's not going to be flawless. It's not going to be professional quality. It was filmed on a phone and it's edited on a phone, but it is going to be something to be proud of. I am so excited. And I think that's important. I think that's kind of why we need drama club. I think it ties so closely into social emotional learning. In the beginning of the year, we talked about how in drama, you can't have a one-man show. I know there's one-man shows. You can't have a one-man show because you need somebody to turn on your mic. You need somebody to open the house. You need somebody to control the lights. You need somebody backstage making sure everything's going all set, even if it's just you sitting on a chair, right? You can't have a one-man show. And in a production, every person has equal importance. The extras are just as important as the lead characters. You can't have a show without them. Every person has equal importance. It takes effort on everybody's part, and it takes communication and time and empathy, being able to step into a role. In order to act, you have to really put yourself in another person's shoes and imagine that backstory. So if I'm playing a princess who's frustrated because she has to marry this prince and I don't want to, well, that's on the surface, but why? What am I digging into? Maybe what do I really want? And, how long have I been hearing this? Have I been thinking about this and dreading it my whole life? Or is this something they just sprung on me last week? And it's a practice trying to put yourself in another person's shoes. And it takes time to get better and better at it. I think by doing drama and by doing those, they really are like thought experiments. And that's why people do role play in a lot of like social work and therapy kind of stuff a lot of the time. It's because it really is a thought experiment that puts you in another person's place. I think it could also really be used, especially in low and middle income districts, in urban districts, to really promote professionalism and help kids get a leg up. We have people who we have young people who've never even entertained the idea of being a boss. They've never entertained the idea of making a lot of money and working in an office. They've never entertained the idea of going to college or a trade school. It just hasn't ever been presented to them.
Right.
And they don't know where to start with that idea. But if you have a show, or if you have a role play experiment, or if you have to, pretend for a second that you are that person, you get to imagine what it's like, and you get to see yourself in a position that you maybe have never even considered before. And I think it's just it's like a doorway. It's a doorway, like in the same way that all stories are. It's a doorway to another world. It's a doorway to another possibility. But the only difference is that instead of just reading it, you're living it.
Right.
Yeah. And I think it's really, really cool. I think it's like kids play pretend, right?
I was just going to say that. It's almost like imaginative play.
Yes.
As you're a little older, because you see those kids who do imaginative play, and it's cool to see their creative energy and how excited they are, and they're moving a mile a minute. And then we get into this stage where that's not cool anymore, and that's
in middle school is when that happens.
Right. Oh yeah,
it stinks.
Yeah.
I know, it's where creativity goes to die.
Yeah,
because they all get so self-conscious. It's terrible. I think we need to remember that you can have those big dreams.
Yes,
you can have those big dreams, and I think sometimes there's so many quotes, and oh my gosh, I don't know who this one was, but those whole things where it was like, if your dreams don't scare you, you're not dreaming big enough. Have you heard that one?
I haven't heard that, but I've heard.
Okay.
I've heard on the opposite side of success is fear. Or yes, I've heard that one. So
I like that one.
So it's just the only thing that's stopping you from success is your own fear. And even myself, I was like, I'm going to be hosting a podcast. What? No, like. So, but
right, because there's always that what if. It's like, what if I fail? It's like, well, yeah. So what if you fail? What if you fail?
And that
then you just don't publish it that time, right? I don't know.
And that's how I took it as, what if I fail? Okay, so I rebrand, I do something different, or I try it in a different way and see how I do. Because I was talking to someone about it the other day. They said, what if only 5 people listen? And I said, that's 5 people that didn't listen prior. And my hope is they can go ahead and share, oh, I heard this person's story. They did this. They felt this way. And it's just something that, because that's the platform I want to use. I want to be able to have people to share these things that they're passionate about, because a lot of the times we put those, like I said, those creative juices, they're just gone. And it's so disappointing to see. It's so disappointing.
We limit ourselves in a big way. And it's so true. And people, again, we're human, right? We want to label things.
Yes.
And I think it's a dangerous practice when we do it for other people, because then at least it's stereotyping. And then I'm like, I'm not going to hire you because you're this, you're not that. I'm not going to hire you. I'm not going to pay you that much money. I'm going to counter offer with less because you are XYZ and not this thing. So it becomes a dangerous practice. It's most dangerous though when we do it to ourselves, and we do it all the time. I'm this, I'm not that. It's like, oh my, what if? And I feel like theater kind of allows that what if. And it's a growth mindset. I love the whole, like, what if, I love that. What if 5 people listen? Like, yeah, that's 5 more than I had before. And that's such a huge growth mindset thing. And I think it also goes back to your values of like, why are you doing the podcast? Why are you doing the podcast? Right. Yeah. Right. It's like, you're not doing it necessarily to like, I'm sure getting you probably do have these goals, but you know, that's probably not your main reason is to get a ton of followers or listeners. You probably aren't like, oh yeah, I need 100,000 downloads. And
it's funny you say that. Right? Honestly, that's not my goal at all. My goal really, if it happens, it happens. But my goal is to really just allow people to share, because as I stated to you when I asked if you would come on, it's one thing if I talk to you, like everything that we just talked about, I could have typed all this out, shared it, and said, I spoke with this amazing woman, Lindsey St. and people would have said, okay, cool. And I'm sure there would have been people that were interested. Absolutely. From what you've shared, it's really interesting. But it's another thing if the person themselves talks about it, shares it, expresses why it means to them. And I think this is a great episode. I think it's awesome. So I'm really happy about this, because I think you've done a great job at just
thank you
expressing the need that we want to be as a society. And I hope that one day we get there. I really do.
I think we will. And I think there's honestly, I will go on the record today. What is it? Saturday, February 5th. I will go on the record today. I think 10 years from now, I think we're going to see a very different nation, because 10 years from now, my 5th graders are going to be 20. They're going to be 21, and they're going to be voting, and they're going to be out there getting jobs and implementing all these things that they're learning now. And I think if SEL were available in every school, that would be awesome. Even though we're not there, I think that these kids are their eyes are open in ways that ours never were. They see things that even the adults in their lives just don't see.
Right.
And I love it. They're calling people out. Right. We see it all the time on social media, and I love it. I applaud it. I think it's great. I think they are a little frustrated. Oops, I'm dropping stuff over here. Hopefully we didn't pick that up on audio. You've been seeing me. Nobody else, fortunately, has seen. I'm like talking with my hands. I'm going to knock something over.
So am I.
This is all right. But you know, these young people, they're calling people out, and I am all for it. I'm all for it. I think they're sick of it. I think they're sick of the last 20 years of what we've seen as a nation and as a culture. We have, since the internet has landed in people's pockets, we have passed judgment. We have made hasty decisions. We have done things that we say is for the betterment of the future, but really truly isn't. It truly isn't. And I think that the young people are starting to get really frustrated. And I'm so for it. So I'm hoping that with SEL, they're able to say, I'm frustrated. What do I do with that? And I'm hoping instead of them just mouthing off on social media, they learn, okay, I'm frustrated. How do I take this emotion? How do I talk to other people about what I'm frustrated about? How do I then use that and communicate effectively? How do I plan, right, from start to finish? How do I set a goal? How do I plan? How do I achieve that goal? You know, reaching out to my people in Congress. How do I get people to hear my message? How do I find other like-minded people? And I think that we're going to get there. I think that SEL education explicitly would help us get there a lot faster. And I think that we all need it. We need to know how to be human. We need to know how to be human. But I'm excited for the future. I know that sounds so, here we are in 2022. The 2020s didn't start out that great, but I'm excited. I can't wait to see what the future really brings. I think there are trials. And if you look back 100 years ago, gosh, there were so many wars. and pandemics and disagreements and all this other stuff. And we have to remember that people are people. Everybody's different. We have disagreements. How we handle them and how we move forward is really what defines us as, I think, as a culture, as individuals, and really truly like as a society. And I think that's what we need. We need more SEL. We need more people evaluating that and remembering everybody has a story. Mm-hmm. So hopefully that's where we'll get to. Hopefully that's my goal.
That's your
goal.
See. I believe
that's my goal.
I believe it. And you know what? I think you're doing a great job. I think you are being a catalyst to this. So as much as we need that, we also need more people like you. However, there's only one you. And I think we are moving into a forward direction, which is awesome. So
yeah.
Is there any other projects, anything you want to share?
Can I put a plug in for my fiance's fantasy
Absolutely
podcast? All right. If you find him, he's the Dynasty Dynamic.
The Dynasty Dynamic
on, and you can find him on Spotify. He's on a couple different things, but they're also on Twitter. That's a good place to hit them up too. All the links are located there. Dynasty Dynamic. I'm just going to put that plug in.
Check out the Dynasty Dynamic.
Check out the Dynasty Dynamic. They get in the weeds with fantasy football, specifically Dynasty fantasy football. But up here in New England, Brady left us. We gotta find something else to keep us going. So if anybody's playing that game, that's where you should go.
There we go. Plug. I want to thank you so much for coming on, being a guest. If I definitely think at some point I'll probably have you come in again. Yeah. And be a reoccurring, because this was awesome. This was just great.
This is so fun. I know we could keep going for like another 2 hours. So we should put a cap on it, and then you know what we'll have to do? I'll have to let you know how that drama production goes. We'll see. How that turns out.
I want to hear all about it. I really do. I was reading something about how Encanto, the song "We Don't Talk About Bruno" is the number one song.
It's the number one song.
And
yeah.
Can you imagine? I would be willing to put some money on it that all those people were at some point bullied for drama club.
Yeah.
So I hope that we're really pushing this, because it's going in the right way. But
we're pushing it. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. I think, you know what? Empathy is it's the name of the game. It's the name of the game. Empathy, kindness. I love that movie Encanto.
Yes.
I always say, they say empathy is Mirabelle, the main character. They say that's her power.
It is a special power.
Empathy. That's her special power. So I am all for it. And we're going to, obviously we'll harness some of that, and hopefully our show will impart just a little bit of that wisdom. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
I can't wait. So thank you so much for coming on. It was amazing.
Thank you.
I can't wait to have you again. She's the coolest person with an iPhone. Without an iPhone, excuse me. Without an iPhone.
Yeah.
How come you got to get on an iPhone? Well,
I know. I'll give it, this year, I promise. This year we'll switch over.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lindsey. It was a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for joining the Reyes Reflection podcast. And as always, may you live, may you love, and may you thrive.